First, let's look at India, where student protests have just forced the education minister to resign. First, let's look at India, where student protests have just forced the education minister to resign. Dharmendra Pradhan stepped down after weeks of growing anger over a leaked national medical exam. Dharmendra Pradhan stepped down after weeks of growing anger over a leaked national medical exam. That single test paper affected more than 2.2 million young people back in May. That single test paper affected more than 2.2 million young people back in May. When the leak was discovered, officials cancelled the test, leaving millions of applicants in despair. When the leak was discovered, officials cancelled the test, leaving millions of applicants in despair. Many students spend years studying for these exams to earn a place at university. Many students spend years studying for these exams to earn a place at university. The anger quickly turned into a nationwide movement with an unusual name. The anger quickly turned into a nationwide movement with an unusual name. It called itself the Cockroach Party, after a top judge mocked unemployed youth. It called itself the Cockroach Party, after a top judge mocked unemployed youth. Young people took that insult and turned it into a popular online campaign. Young people took that insult and turned it into a popular online campaign. Soon thousands of students were marching in the streets of New Delhi. Soon thousands of students were marching in the streets of New Delhi. The authorities tried to stop the demonstrations by closing 17 underground stations. The authorities tried to stop the demonstrations by closing 17 underground stations. Police used tear gas and wooden sticks to disperse the crowds in the capital. Police used tear gas and wooden sticks to disperse the crowds in the capital. Instead of stopping the crowd, the heavy police response made the anger spread faster. Instead of stopping the crowd, the heavy police response made the anger spread faster. Protests soon broke out in other major cities like Kolkata, Pune, and Hyderabad. Protests soon broke out in other major cities like Kolkata, Pune, and Hyderabad. Prime Minister Narendra Modi tried to calm the situation with a personal video message. Prime Minister Narendra Modi tried to calm the situation with a personal video message. He filmed himself on his phone late at night, asking students to trust him. He filmed himself on his phone late at night, asking students to trust him. However, the students mocked his video layout and kept demanding real changes. However, the students mocked his video layout and kept demanding real changes. After 12 years of firm control, the government finally yielded to the pressure. After 12 years of firm control, the government finally yielded to the pressure. The education minister resigned on social media, saying he wanted to restore order. The education minister resigned on social media, saying he wanted to restore order. This step marks a rare victory for young voters against a powerful leader. This step marks a rare victory for young voters against a powerful leader. Yet the student movement is not backing down just because one minister left. Yet the student movement is not backing down just because one minister left. They now demand compensation for families of students who took their own lives. They now demand compensation for families of students who took their own lives. They also want an official police apology and promises of systemic reform. They also want an official police apology and promises of systemic reform. India has over 370 million young people seeking a better future. India has over 370 million young people seeking a better future. Nearly 1/4 of them are not currently in education, employment or training. Nearly 1/4 of them are not currently in education, employment or training. The government aims to spend 6% of national income on education. The government aims to spend 6% of national income on education. In reality, actual spending remains closer to 4% of national output. In reality, actual spending remains closer to 4% of national output. This gap leaves millions of graduates competing for very few good jobs. This gap leaves millions of graduates competing for very few good jobs. Now, the Prime Minister must decide how to rebuild trust with India's youth. Now, the Prime Minister must decide how to rebuild trust with India's youth. Whether this resignation leads to real education reform remains the big question. Whether this resignation leads to real education reform remains the big question. Moving on from those youth protests in India, our second story turns to global money. Moving on from those youth protests in India, our second story turns to global money. For half a century, the global financial system ran on the petrodollar. For half a century, the global financial system ran on the petrodollar. Countries bought oil in US dollars, which kept the currency in constant demand. Countries bought oil in US dollars, which kept the currency in constant demand. Today, a remarkably similar system might be taking shape around artificial intelligence. Today, a remarkably similar system might be taking shape around artificial intelligence. Many people focus on which tech company creates the smartest AI models. Many people focus on which tech company creates the smartest AI models. But the real shift begins when businesses embed AI into their daily routines. But the real shift begins when businesses embed AI into their daily routines. At that stage, computing power becomes an indispensable resource for modern companies. At that stage, computing power becomes an indispensable resource for modern companies. Just like barrels of oil, compute may soon be priced in American dollars. Just like barrels of oil, compute may soon be priced in American dollars. Heavy energy use forms the foundation of this new digital metric. Heavy energy use forms the foundation of this new digital metric. Data centers convert raw electricity into computing capacity that companies secure years in advance. Data centers convert raw electricity into computing capacity that companies secure years in advance. For instance, one major AI developer recently signed a 20-year lease for data centers. For instance, one major AI developer recently signed a 20-year lease for data centers. That long-term contract acts as a massive bet that global compute demand will last. That long-term contract acts as a massive bet that global compute demand will last. On the consumer side, consulting teams are placing engineers directly inside traditional businesses. On the consumer side, consulting teams are placing engineers directly inside traditional businesses. These engineers help reshape company workflows around artificial intelligence. These engineers help reshape company workflows around artificial intelligence. Once those automated systems are active, computing capacity becomes a permanent operating expense. Once those automated systems are active, computing capacity becomes a permanent operating expense. This dynamic creates the first path towards stronger dollar dominance. This dynamic creates the first path towards stronger dollar dominance. If American firms dominate the supply chain, digital production will require constant dollar liquidity. If American firms dominate the supply chain, digital production will require constant dollar liquidity. Payments will flow directly into US banks, rather than accumulating in foreign accounts first. Payments will flow directly into US banks, rather than accumulating in foreign accounts first. Yet the initial invoice represents only the visible surface of this transformation. Yet the initial invoice represents only the visible surface of this transformation. Beneath it, a new payment infrastructure is being built for autonomous software. Beneath it, a new payment infrastructure is being built for autonomous software. When AI agents order inventory or hire services, they require machine-friendly payment rails. When AI agents order inventory or hire services, they require machine-friendly payment rails. Major credit networks and AI companies are already partnering to construct these automated rails. Major credit networks and AI companies are already partnering to construct these automated rails. This leads to the second path, reinforcing the American currency. This leads to the second path, reinforcing the American currency. Digital coins pegged to the dollar offer the fast settlement that machine commerce needs. Digital coins pegged to the dollar offer the fast settlement that machine commerce needs. More than 140 financial and crypto firms already support $1 linked token. More than 140 financial and crypto firms already support $1 linked token. Eventually, these two separate paths could merge into one single system. Eventually, these two separate paths could merge into one single system. The same digital rail paying for automated software tasks could settle compute bills just as easily. The same digital rail paying for automated software tasks could settle compute bills just as easily. Combining dollar invoicing with digital coin settlement transforms technological reliance into monetary reliance. Combining dollar invoicing with digital coin settlement transforms technological reliance into monetary reliance. Countries hoping to reduce their dollar dependence might need to rethink their own strategies quickly. Countries hoping to reduce their dollar dependence might need to rethink their own strategies quickly. They must link energy, computing and payment systems to avoid getting locked out. They must link energy, computing and payment systems to avoid getting locked out. For now, this AI-driven monetary loop is only beginning to take form. For now, this AI-driven monetary loop is only beginning to take form. It remains uncertain whether competing nations can build viable alternatives before the system solidifies. It remains uncertain whether competing nations can build viable alternatives before the system solidifies. Moving on to our third topic, we leave global finance to look at American politics. Moving on to our third topic, we leave global finance to look at American politics. A sharp conflict is unfolding over how the United States handles immigration enforcement. A sharp conflict is unfolding over how the United States handles immigration enforcement. Federal agents are currently arresting and detaining people at a record rate. Federal agents are currently arresting and detaining people at a record rate. President Donald Trump has instructed immigration authorities to push for a major crackdown. President Donald Trump has instructed immigration authorities to push for a major crackdown. As a result, the agency known as IC is working under intense political pressure. As a result, the agency known as IC is working under intense political pressure. Last month, officers sent over 43,000 people into detention facilities. Last month, officers sent over 43,000 people into detention facilities. That average works out to nearly 1,400 people detained every single day. That average works out to nearly 1,400 people detained every single day. Data suggests that the total for July will likely reach 50,000 people. Data suggests that the total for July will likely reach 50,000 people. To hit these demanding goals, agents are using much more aggressive operations. To hit these demanding goals, agents are using much more aggressive operations. In recent weeks, these risky confrontations have led to deadly results. In recent weeks, these risky confrontations have led to deadly results. Immigration officers recently killed 2 people during enforcement actions. Immigration officers recently killed 2 people during enforcement actions. These fatal incidents have provoked widespread outrage among the American public. These fatal incidents have provoked widespread outrage among the American public. People across the country are expressing deep concern over the methods being used. People across the country are expressing deep concern over the methods being used. This places federal immigration enforcement in a very difficult political spot. This places federal immigration enforcement in a very difficult political spot. On one hand, the White House expects officers to keep pushing for higher arrest totals. On one hand, the White House expects officers to keep pushing for higher arrest totals. On the other hand, public anger is mounting over the violence and loss of life. On the other hand, public anger is mounting over the violence and loss of life. Former Homeland Security officials believe the current strategy is deeply flawed. Former Homeland Security officials believe the current strategy is deeply flawed. One former Assistant Secretary warned that the agency must stop playing a numbers game. One former Assistant Secretary warned that the agency must stop playing a numbers game. When success is measured only by total arrests, dangerous mistakes become far more likely. When success is measured only by total arrests, dangerous mistakes become far more likely. Yet, scaling back enforcement creates a different problem for the president. Yet, scaling back enforcement creates a different problem for the president. His supporters expect him to deliver on his promise of strict border control. His supporters expect him to deliver on his promise of strict border control. Timing makes this dilemma even more urgent for everyone involved. Timing makes this dilemma even more urgent for everyone involved. The United States will hold major midterm elections this coming November. The United States will hold major midterm elections this coming November. Midterm votes often depend on how moderate voters feel about government policy. Midterm votes often depend on how moderate voters feel about government policy. Widespread anger over aggressive tactics could cost the president's party valuable votes. Widespread anger over aggressive tactics could cost the president's party valuable votes. Historically, American immigration policy has moved in long, repeating cycles. Historically, American immigration policy has moved in long, repeating cycles. Periods of open immigration are often followed by sharp public backlash and tight restrictions. Periods of open immigration are often followed by sharp public backlash and tight restrictions. Today, the nation is right in the middle of another tense pullback. Today, the nation is right in the middle of another tense pullback. The government must now decide if it will adjust its enforcement tactics. The government must now decide if it will adjust its enforcement tactics. Continuing down the current path risks alienating millions of ordinary citizens. Continuing down the current path risks alienating millions of ordinary citizens. But softening the approach could disappoint the president's most loyal voters. But softening the approach could disappoint the president's most loyal voters. In the coming months, leaders must balance political promises against growing public outrage. In the coming months, leaders must balance political promises against growing public outrage. How they resolve this tension will shape both immigration enforcement and the upcoming elections. How they resolve this tension will shape both immigration enforcement and the upcoming elections. For our fourth topic, we turn from American immigration debates to a quiet shift in Central Asia. For our fourth topic, we turn from American immigration debates to a quiet shift in Central Asia. Kazakhstan has long been one of Russia's closest military and economic partners. Kazakhstan has long been one of Russia's closest military and economic partners. The two nations share the longest continuous land border in the world. The two nations share the longest continuous land border in the world. Yet during talks in Siberia, Kazakhstan's president gave a rare public warning to Vladimir Putin. Yet during talks in Siberia, Kazakhstan's president gave a rare public warning to Vladimir Putin. He called for an immediate freeze to the war in Ukraine. He called for an immediate freeze to the war in Ukraine. He added that many countries, including his own, simply do not understand why this war continues. He added that many countries, including his own, simply do not understand why this war continues. He expressed sadness over the thousands of young people dying on both sides. He expressed sadness over the thousands of young people dying on both sides. Why would such a close ally take the risk of criticizing Moscow in public? Why would such a close ally take the risk of criticizing Moscow in public? The answer comes down to economic survival and geographical pressure. The answer comes down to economic survival and geographical pressure. Kazakhstan relies on Russian territory to export about 80% of its oil to world markets. Kazakhstan relies on Russian territory to export about 80% of its oil to world markets. That oil travels through long pipelines that end at ports on the Black Sea. That oil travels through long pipelines that end at ports on the Black Sea. Recently, Ukrainian drones have launched deep strikes inside Russia's heartland. Recently, Ukrainian drones have launched deep strikes inside Russia's heartland. These attacks hit major oil refineries, storage centers, and shipping facilities. These attacks hit major oil refineries, storage centers, and shipping facilities. Every time a strike damages the pipeline network, Kazakh oil stops flowing. Every time a strike damages the pipeline network, Kazakh oil stops flowing. That forces Kazakhstan to cut back oil production, hurting its national income. That forces Kazakhstan to cut back oil production, hurting its national income. At the same time, Kazakh leaders must carefully balance their foreign relations. At the same time, Kazakh leaders must carefully balance their foreign relations. They border Russia, but they also maintain strong economic ties with China and Western countries. They border Russia, but they also maintain strong economic ties with China and Western countries. In fact, Kazakhstan has consistently refused to recognize Russian control over Ukrainian land. In fact, Kazakhstan has consistently refused to recognize Russian control over Ukrainian land. It continues to recognize Ukraine as a fully sovereign nation. It continues to recognize Ukraine as a fully sovereign nation. So when their president spoke in Siberia, he was trying to protect his country's stability. So when their president spoke in Siberia, he was trying to protect his country's stability. He suggested returning to an early negotiation framework created in 2022. He suggested returning to an early negotiation framework created in 2022. Under that proposal, Ukraine would agree to remain neutral. Under that proposal, Ukraine would agree to remain neutral. In return, major world powers would guarantee Ukraine's future security. In return, major world powers would guarantee Ukraine's future security. The Kazakh leader mentioned that Western leaders had asked him to deliver a message. The Kazakh leader mentioned that Western leaders had asked him to deliver a message. Yet the response from Moscow was swift and uncompromising. Yet the response from Moscow was swift and uncompromising. A Kremlin spokesperson announced that a freeze of the war is completely impossible right now. A Kremlin spokesperson announced that a freeze of the war is completely impossible right now. Russia maintains that it will keep fighting until all of its military goals are met. Russia maintains that it will keep fighting until all of its military goals are met. That leaves Kazakhstan in a very difficult position. That leaves Kazakhstan in a very difficult position. It cannot stop Ukrainian drone strikes, nor can it convince Moscow to compromise. It cannot stop Ukrainian drone strikes, nor can it convince Moscow to compromise. Its leader made a brave attempt to whisper peace to a powerful neighbor. Its leader made a brave attempt to whisper peace to a powerful neighbor. For now, the fighting continues, and the economic fallout keeps spilling across the border. For now, the fighting continues, and the economic fallout keeps spilling across the border. Finally, we turn to our fifth and last story for today. Finally, we turn to our fifth and last story for today. We move from diplomatic talks over Ukraine to a growing crisis at sea. We move from diplomatic talks over Ukraine to a growing crisis at sea. American and British officials are planning an urgent meeting in London next week. American and British officials are planning an urgent meeting in London next week. They want to build an international naval team with up to 40 countries. They want to build an international naval team with up to 40 countries. Their main goal is protecting oil tankers and cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Their main goal is protecting oil tankers and cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz. That narrow passage handles a huge amount of global trade and fuel. That narrow passage handles a huge amount of global trade and fuel. Right now, fighting between the US and Iran makes the route extremely dangerous. Right now, fighting between the US and Iran makes the route extremely dangerous. Shipping companies are facing massive costs and grave safety risks for their crews. Shipping companies are facing massive costs and grave safety risks for their crews. Why are London and Washington pushing for this broad coalition right now? Why are London and Washington pushing for this broad coalition right now? Earlier, British plans focused only on helping after the war came to an end. Earlier, British plans focused only on helping after the war came to an end. They wanted a peace force to reopen the waters once fighting stopped completely. They wanted a peace force to reopen the waters once fighting stopped completely. Now, British defence officials worry the conflict is spiralling out of control immediately. Now, British defence officials worry the conflict is spiralling out of control immediately. They warn that conditions in the strait are about to get much worse. They warn that conditions in the strait are about to get much worse. So leaders are trying to act before global supply chains suffer severe damage. So leaders are trying to act before global supply chains suffer severe damage. There is also some tension behind these new talks. There is also some tension behind these new talks. Washington was recently unhappy when London hesitated to allow strikes from British bases. Washington was recently unhappy when London hesitated to allow strikes from British bases. Britain later agreed to base access after Iran launched retaliatory attacks in the region. Britain later agreed to base access after Iran launched retaliatory attacks in the region. Now, both governments want to put that friction behind them and work together. Now, both governments want to put that friction behind them and work together. The new British Prime Minister spoke with the American President earlier this week. The new British Prime Minister spoke with the American President earlier this week. He promised to help keep ships moving and lower prices for everyday families. He promised to help keep ships moving and lower prices for everyday families. Yet forming this naval alliance is far from simple or guaranteed. Yet forming this naval alliance is far from simple or guaranteed. Officials have not yet confirmed if the London meeting will definitely happen. Officials have not yet confirmed if the London meeting will definitely happen. Even if 40 nations join, patrolling such dangerous waters requires immense military resources. Even if 40 nations join, patrolling such dangerous waters requires immense military resources. Iran has hidden missiles and sea mines spread across its coastline. Iran has hidden missiles and sea mines spread across its coastline. Sending warships into the narrow channel could easily lead to further military escalation. Sending warships into the narrow channel could easily lead to further military escalation. We will see next week if world leaders can agree on a shared plan. We will see next week if world leaders can agree on a shared plan. That brings us to the end of our 5 topics for this morning. That brings us to the end of our 5 topics for this morning. Thank you for sharing your morning coffee with me today. Thank you for sharing your morning coffee with me today. Have a wonderful day ahead, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow. Have a wonderful day ahead, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow.